Welcome to your very first integrated science lesson video. So we're going to start with chapter 1, science skills. And this is actually a pretty important chapter because it breaks down what exactly is science, what constitutes as science, what are we learning about. Then it goes into, well, once I ask questions, how am I able to perform experiments or the different parts of scientific discovery? Part 3 starts talking about measurements and things that we need in order to take records. And the last section is once I perform an experiment and collect all of this information, how do I let people know about it? So let's begin with section 1, what is science? Science involves asking questions about nature and then finding ways to answer them. And it all stems from the key word curiosity. Since you were little, you were probably curious about so many different things. You may have asked what lives in the bottom of a pond, or what's in the middle of a baseball? What if I add more chocolate milk? Are there aliens out there? Why do the trees change color? All of this are examples of curiosity, and without it, we wouldn't be getting very far in science because it's the basis of science. Curiosity causes us to ask questions, and we as human beings love to find answers. And we do that through scientific research or experiments. And when we do this, we gather information. Now, there are different types of informations that we gather. The first one is qualitative information, and the next one is quantitative. And these words sound an awful lot alike, and they look alike too. The key is the beginning four letters. Qualitative, if I were to ask you to tell me the quality of something, like the quality of a shirt, you're usually going to give me a description. You might say that it is a very soft, big, fluffy shirt, or you might say it's small and itchy. Other experiments, you're going to give me quantitative data, and quantitative is like quantity or the amount, numerical. I always think of the N and relate it to number. These are going to be things like, oh, the shirt is a size 7. It weighs so many ounces. It is this long, like 8 inches long. That's like a Barbie doll shirt. Some questions, though, for example, how the universe began, cannot be answered with direct observations, and instead they have to use some kind of other evidence. So here I've taken a little paragraph and I've posted it in here to look at different things of qualitative versus quantitative. It says Johnny was walking through the woods on a hot summer day. He checked his iPhone and saw that the temperature was 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so he decided to take a short break because he was very thirsty and was dripping with sweat. There was a stump that measured 3 feet tall, and it looked like it was very comfortable. After sitting down, Johnny noticed several beautiful flowers on the ground, and each of the flowers had 5 bees around 1 inch in length swarming around them. This made Johnny very nervous because he was highly allergic to bee stings. Just last week, Johnny had spent 3 hours in the hospital after he'd stepped on a bee in his yard. Being careful, very careful, Johnny stood up and began walking north back to his house. Well, first, qualitative data, again, remember this has to do with a description. So, some examples of qualitative data are going to be things like hot. That gives you an idea of the temperature outside. I want you to pause this video and see if you can find 4 more examples. Some other ones that I have seen are things like comfortable. So we know that the tree stump didn't have spikes out of it. Beautiful flowers. So we know they probably were not going to be Venus flytraps. Another example is highly allergic. This is a good description because somebody can be slightly allergic to something and just have to take Benadryl, while another person will swell up and potentially need an EpiPen. So right now I have 4. Let's look for one more. And the one more that really helps is, let's say, walking north. And that kind of gives me a description of a distance. or I can even say a short break. So I know that my break wasn't 2 hours long, it might have been 5 or 10 minutes. Quantitative data, on the other hand, has to do with numbers. So for example, 100 degrees, we know specifically how hot it was. 3 feet tall, 5 bees, we know the amount and we know that their length is about 1 inch. Johnny had 3 hours, that's a time. Time is a unit of measurement. So there's some differences between qualitative and quantitative. The next gambit goes into science and technology. What are they? Well, science and technology, first and foremost, are interdependent, which means that they are connected to one another. Advances in one leads to advances in the other. For example, maybe we learned more science about how mirrors work and imaging works, and that knowledge allows us to build the technology of the telescope. And building that technology allows us to see into outer space and allows us to discover a new planet. And then that's going to cause us to want to build more technology and discover more science, and it goes and it feeds off each other. Now, this is all great and fine, but we have to be able to identify and understand the difference between science and technology. Science is a system of knowledge and the methods we use to find it. So, all the information that we know and processes of how we get there, like experiments. The whole goal of it is to expand knowledge and learn more. Technology, on the other hand, is taking that knowledge and using it to solve problems. For example, how am I able to see better with glasses? Another problem is, how do I make this battery last longer? The whole goal is to apply it. Another example is electricity. Our knowledge of electricity is science, but using that knowledge to find a way to power houses is technology. Here is a good example. A telephone was invented in 1876. By 1927, it was possible to make phone calls from New York to London. Eventually, the telephones became mobile and you could move around with them. And then about high school, they got to be looking like this. This was not touchscreen. We had to push the buttons down here. A lot of us love to call them Blackberries. And now we have phones that are capable of doing things computers can. So it's just amazing how much technology changes. From there, we're going to kind of branch into, we define science, but what knowledge are we gathering? And this class specifically, we're going to be looking at the natural science. This is not social science, or otherwise known as social studies. We won't be talking about any of that, but more of natural science. This includes 3 categories. The first one is physical science. This is chemistry and physics. In this class, this is called physical science, and we will talk about chemistry first semester, and we'll get into physics towards the end of first, early second semester. Then we have earth and space science. This includes things like geology, meteorology or study of rocks, oceanography of the ocean floor, and astronomy, which is what we'll hit at the end of second semester. And then we have life science, which I do not teach life science. If you would like to learn more about this, Mr. B teaches a life and physical science class, but also biology as well. There are different parts of life science. There's botany, which is the study of plants, zoology, which is the study of animals. Ecology is how all these different things work with each other out in its own habitat. And then genetics has to do with how do we pass down our traits? Why do we look like our father? How are we able to reproduce new humans? So let's go in a little bit more details about these different areas. For physical science, I do want to point out that this is the study of non-living things. So we're not going to be looking at plants or birds or bees or anything that's going to be moving around. I also stated the first thing we're going to look at is chemistry, and this is the study of the composition or what something's made up of. the structure of it, different properties of it. So, does it have chemical versus physical properties? And the reactions of matter. We can also talk about states of matter. Is it a solid, liquid, or gas? Physics is the study of energy through interactions between the two through forces and motion. This is where we're going to introduce distance and displacement, speed, velocity, even acceleration. The application of physics and chemistry to the study of Earth is actually called earth science. So we can study geology, which is looking at the origin and history of Earth, and then astronomy, looking beyond Earth. What are the planets? How are stars formed, etc. And then last but not least, the study of living things is known as biology. This is a term not on the other slide. This is our life science. This deals with living humans. Biology includes physics and chemistry of living things, as well as the origins and behaviors, and they study the way in which people and organisms grow, how we're able to survive, and how we're able to reproduce. Now, one thing to note is that there is a lot of overlap between these different areas of study. It's not just biology, it's not just chemistry. A lot of biology involves parts of chemistry in them. For example, I teach anatomy and physiology, and ions and elements are very important in making sure the body works correctly. Biophysics is actually a growing area that you guys can take that includes physics and biology. Even biochem. Biochem in college takes together the aspects of chemistry and biology and puts them into one class. Now, here are the big ideas we're going to hit and see this year. First is space and time. The universe is both very old and very big. The second is matter and change. While a very small amount of the universe is actually matter, all matter that we're familiar with is made up of building blocks called atoms. And so we're going to be reintroducing and teaching you about protons, neutrons, and electrons. The last two big ideas, the first one is forces and motion. This is where we're going to be learning about Newton's 3 laws of motion. We're also going to be talking about how do we speed up things, slow them down, what does it mean when I accelerate. And then energy, it's going to talk about how it exists in many forms. It can be transferred from one form or object to another, but you can't destroy it. And that's the end of today's lesson. If you have any questions, please let me know. And otherwise I hope you guys have a great day.